There we go. Okay. We should be officially live for a pre-show now. Unless I messed something up, which of course is always a
Or unless I
possibility.
messed it up. I'll probably mess something up.
Eh. I think people tend to like the casual aspect of it, I feel. And we haven't officially started yet anyways, so the viewers know how this works. We go live early, so it gives people time to come in.
Yeah, I guess it's been a while since I've done it. Like,
That as
what,
well.
2 years maybe?
Yeah, I know you've been on the show a couple times with us, but that was definitely more like year one of Top Clack.
Yeah, because it was the whole dog thing.
You mean Huey's dog? Oh yes, yes, of course. One of the legendary episodes that is actually lost. That VOD never got published.
Yeah,
because we were worried about it. It doesn't exist anymore. So that's like really classic ancient Top Clack history.
Nobody can go back and see how crazy Top Clack used to be.
People getting
bit by dogs and
people people getting fired from their keyboard jobs for being too drunk on stream.
Would like to avoid that.
Poor Huey, man. That was a weird time.
It was very strange.
Yeah. A lot of you newer viewers probably have no idea what the heck we're talking about, and that's probably for the best.
I don't even remember him drinking all that much. It was just
no, he killed like a whole fifth that stream, which is a lot of alcohol for an hour.
Oh yeah, that would do it. I mean, clearly, a lot, when you find like the slouch and fall over kind of thing. Like,
yeah, I remember he passed out and like he hit his head on his desk on the way down. Yeah. And, like, you could just hear, like, a thump on stream. Oh, man. That was such an amazing and a terrible episode for so many reasons.
Yeah. One for the memory books.
For real. Of course, to all you out there watching right now, we are just live a little bit early for a pre-show. As usual, you know how this works. Let us know how the audio sounds. Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Is our guest Andy here too loud or too quiet? Let us know. I think I have everything set up right, but I thought that the last 2 episodes as well, and I kept having audio issues anyways. Sound is awesome. Cool. LSB is a smidge quiet. Okay, I can correct that. No big deal.
Correct it. I'll let you do it instead of me, because I'll probably change it too much.
If we both do it, it'll probably be too much.
All kinds of fucked up.
All right. I turn them up about 10%. We'll see how that goes. LSB up a hair. Okay. Yeah. Let me know how this goes, guys.
How about now? Is this better?
It sounds so clear when you actually are that close to the mic, too. Sounds really good.
Oh, yeah, I can move it a little closer.
I should probably start talking. I sit farther away from my mic than I probably
should. Yeah, I kind of
slouch. So do I. I have terrible posture at my desk. Absolutely terrible.
Uh-huh. That's why I just get a comfortable chair and just... I mean, usually I swivel my chair, kick my feet up on the desk, and...
Yeah.
Tight, because right now I'm using this.
Is that a
$14 Raypoo?
Is that how you pronounce that brand name? I've always wondered.
Certainly not.
I always thought it was like Rapu or Rapu or something.
Some shit off brand. With all the music stuff, though, I needed something wireless for. That's why this guy's back here. That's what I normally use.
Mm.
But I needed something because my desk is covered with other kinds of keyboards right now.
People were giving me shit because I recently bought a Logitech K400, which is like a $17 keyboard at Walmart. That's wireless. It has a built-in trackpad. It's a really it's a super efficient product. It really is. And it's pretty inexpensive, and people were giving me shit. It's like I don't have a mechanical keyboard. Like I just lay in my bed, and like it's what I use for my like my HD PC. Like when I'm in bed and the TV's across the room. Like you want something small, light, wireless, has a built-in trackpad.
Yep.
Like
exactly why I have this one.
It's good stuff.
My main keyboard for a while was actually some really awful-looking Orion G Spark, whatever.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Was that the one with the Romer G switches?
Uh-huh. Which aren't terrible. I don't know. I mean, I feel like once you start using anything after about 5 minutes, it just feels normal and you don't think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
It just looked really weird. It was one of the really angular, like, super gamey looking ones.
classic Logitech.
No pretense here. I just use.
Yeah. J-Shop, thank you so much for that. The 500 bits, termination bits. And shout out to Huey, man of interest.
If anybody wants to donate any bells to me.
Oh, you're on that Animal Crossing life now, aren't you?
Yeah, I got it. I've never played one of them, but my little brother got the game, so
nice.
I got it. I'm still waiting to figure out what the point of it is.
There's not really a point as far as I'm aware. I'm new to it as well. I just started playing it the other day for the first time, just got it. And yeah, I'm new to the series too, so I'm trying to figure it out. I have cherries on my island, I know that.
Yeah, I got some cherries. Not the switches.
Alright, shout out to... yeah, for real. The point is to flex with all the ironwood furniture you have. I guess so. I mean, it seems like it's kind of just like a casual experience where you just get stuff. Like there's accomplishments and accolades, and you're trying to pay off stuff and buy new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, after about the third day, I was in debt with a house. My stocks had completely bottomed out, and then it was just a little bit too real. So,
capitalism simulator.
Not great. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, so we're about 1 minute. I'm going to roll the intro, and we're going to officially start the show here, guys. So strap yourselves in. Make sure you got a snack and a drink. Alright guys, hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Behind the Keyboard. As usual, I am your host Quakums, and today we have a very special guest. As usual in this series, we have Livingspeedbump, aka Andy, who works over at Gmk, well not physically, but he works with Gmk. And I know a lot of you guys have been pretty curious on some of the Gmk topics that have been coming up lately, so we're hopefully going to be addressing a lot of that as well. I expect all of you to be mature and respectful in chat, as is, tradition in Top Clack. Wink, wink. Thank you, Heat Loss, for the sub. Appreciate that. But let's get right into it, guys. So, Andy, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, as usual.
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure to have you around. So we'll start off with something a little bit simple. Everyone kind of has an origin story of how they got into this hobby. And I don't know if yours is as boring as mine, but I guess we're about to find out. But what's kind of interesting about you in this hobby is, you have such a definitive presence in the keyboard hobby, and you have for a number of years. You're quite literally a true veteran and an OG in this community. But it's probably safe to say that keyboards aren't even really your primary passion. So I'm kind of curious how you got into keyboards when, as we can probably tell from your video feed here, that you're really into music.
Yeah, so music is definitely the hobby, which is, I guess it's interesting. I guess I kind of owe keyboards to music. So that's what my degree is in, like audio engineering. Worked in Nashville for a while, Analog Studios. Before that, I owned a record store / bookstore / porno store in the mountains of North Carolina. So with that being my job, which had previously just been a hobby, I kind of just got into keyboards. Probably, what year is this? 2020?
What year is this?
So at least 10 years ago. Just collecting old boards back on when you could get, I don't know, a beam spring on eBay for $15 easy.
Yeah, before this hobby was the way that we see it now.
Yeah. So anyway, with music being kind of a thing, and keyboards were the hobby for quite a while, I guess I started really investing more time and energy into this probably 6 or 7 years ago. So that's about when I did the first run of Jukebox, which was the first SA set to run on Mass Drop. So things were still pretty small back then. I mean, the original run of Jukebox sold 100 units. I remember right before that, 1976 had run on the PMK group buy page, which hasn't existed in, I don't know, you might remember that better than me, but it's
been a while.
Yeah, so NG Coder, the guy that did that, was a really good friend of mine. We actually lived 10 miles apart when I lived in North Carolina and would hang out all the time. So remember that set running on there and crossing my fingers, hoping it would hit 100 units so we could actually get it made. And I guess that was about one of the first things I actually did. At the time, I forgot I was a Reddit mod for a while as well with Ripster.
Oh, I remember that. Whatever happened to Ripster? Have you talked to him in the last
a
5 years?
Bit, yeah. Yeah, I have some of his like contact information and try to reach out from time to time, and he's responsive but slow.
I've been trying to get him on the show, even if it's like, you know, he's
behind
a mat, because you know that's a lot of newer people. A lot of newer people to the hobby don't even know the name Ripster, but he's kind of a legend.
Probably the single biggest person in keyboards, like as far as online forum presence go.
Notoriety, yeah.
Fight me on who that would be, but as far as, you know, for better or worse, he's probably the guy.
Yeah, it's
yeah. So then I quit that though, or I resigned as a because I was key chatter at the time and didn't want that conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And then kind of went from there. I started working a lot more with Mass Drop. Not really as a designer. I just kind of got along with a lot of the original guys at Mass Drop too, who are still some of my favorite people ever. But got a lot of other designers involved. So that was more my role there. Like Carbon, I kind of dug that one up and told him you need to run this set. And God, there's so many other sets I've done. I think Blotsky's initial set, whatever that was.
Oh, the was it the Metro one?
I think it was Oblivion. Was it Oblivion?
Was it Oblivion? I don't know if he ever actually ran Metro, but I remember a long time ago I was on a video call with him. He was showing me his design for Metro, which was like this.
Yeah, I remember that.
As you could probably expect, it was like every legend had like it was like a train board basically, like so you could see like the routes in every train.
Right. Yep,
it was really interesting at the time. But I'm going to digress a little bit. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time both inside and outside of the keyboard hobby. You've worked with Mass Drop, you've headed Key Chatter, you've put out multiple key set designs, and now you've landed a position with GMK. So what was the kind of lead up to that? What made you actually want to work for GMK?
So that probably started the actual talks officially began at the NorCal meetup that was at Nest. Was that 3 years ago?
Oh, that was 2017, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds
November,
right. So,
towards the end of 2017.
Yeah. Yep. So at that, I had been in contact with Christoph just from all the other work with GMK that I've done, and he actually came to that meetup.
Oh yeah, you introduced me to him there. Actually, I remember that.
So so he came and outside of the meetup, he really came. We were talking over stuff with Mass Drop and Kunal and Alex, if people remember who they were, like Total Champs as well. But I spent a lot of time with Christoph that whole week, kind of, and with him and Kunal, we were just drinking and shitty Asian dive bars in San Francisco, and kind of just came up that if we start a US division, how do you feel about running it? Of course I said yes. Who would say no to that? But it still took another year after that for things to really get started. At the time I was living in Salt Lake, working as the director of communications at an IT firm there. So go to 2018 when we officially decided we'd start a US division, and did my research, picked a state to base the operations based on taxes and boring stuff, but was really excited to move to Washington and start that up.
Yeah, and it's as a Washingtonian, I can officially welcome you happily to our lovely state as well.
I know. I think we almost moved here for Liz's job like 2 years prior. Yeah, when we were going to move here. So I kind of like was in the early stages of the Seattle Slack, I think it was at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you were asking me about it too.
Yeah, so I was there, and then that was like a false start, but we eventually made it.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
You
I
like it
love
here?
watching. Oh yeah,
It's
we have the greenery of North Carolina, the giantness of the landscape of Utah, and a
yeah.
lot of the laws here are better than Utah. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. That's fair. So obviously you've been in the keyboard hobby overall for quite a while now, and you were kind of there before the times of tons of custom keyboards and lots of GMK group buys and other key set group buys and all this drama, and now we have all these new switches and stuff. But back in the day, pre 2014, we didn't have quite as many sets running, we didn't have quite as
We
many
didn't have
customs
anything.
running.
Yeah.
Cherry still had the patent on the MX Switch design, so we didn't have things like Gateron or Zelios or Greetech or JWK Duroc or anything like that. It was a much simpler time back. People used Philcos and Model Ms, and everyone would join the
Yeah.
GMK set because it would only run every 3 months and stuff like that. What has really changed over the years, in your opinion, from back then to how we are now, both in community mentality and maybe some of the other things that we see?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I mean, I think something that's kind of stayed consistent throughout is just how closely knit the community seems to be. I mean, now it's a little more fragmented, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but everybody has their clique or their group somewhere, right? So
Yeah.
now it's more than just Geek Hack and then Death Authority and then the Reddit. So that was the main place for so long until I guess Bunny really started the Slack thing off with their Slack. Um, and now it's kind of digressed into Slacks and Discords, and I think that's a good thing because everybody has a lot more personal interaction with other community members. Of course, the flip side being now people don't get along, or with more communication comes more interpersonal issues. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. With buys and stuff, though, it's been really cool to see all the new vendors pop up. I really uh, some of them are just they work so hard. It's crazy to see how some of these guys do stuff on their own or with one person helping, um, and just providing so many more buys. I mean, back in the day, it really was like you mentioned, one buy every 2 months. So GMK, I feel like was more rare too than Signature Plastics at the time.
Oh
If
yeah, by
you would
a
agree on that,
lot.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
2012, 2013, maybe even 2014. I think 2014, 2015 is when GMK really started to come out a little bit more popularity, I would say.
Right.
Even
Because
after the questionable original Triumph Adler run that
yep,
a lot of people had issues with, but
I was about to mention that. Before then, there was no custom colors. There was no banderoles or the trays. None of that was a thing until Triumph Adler. So,
GMK branded and tagged bags, man. Those
yep,
were the days.
yeah,
I,
the
I still
bag.
have a few of those.
Yep. So
That's
things have definitely come a long way since that. Not even just GMK. Now there's other cap manufacturers all over as
yeah.
well that are doing, like MT3. It's cool to see brand new profiles popping up like that. Uh, I know a few other people have tried to make profiles or have as well, which is pretty cool. So I think we just have so many more options these days than we did, which is a good thing. I mean, we shouldn't, look at the past and reminisce on how good it was when it was definitely frustrating then at you'd see good products come up every now and then that just wouldn't reach MO crazy to people now, but we had a hard time hitting 100 sets on a lot of the early stuff. Like, people were buying full extra sets, and Signature Plastics, people don't know that they just send you, a bag of 100 A's, a bag of 100 B's, a bag of 100 C's, and the group buy leaders would have to hand sort them, and they took forever. So
The dark ages, one might say.
yeah, so it's in a lot of ways I think things have really improved and made it easier for people to get into the community, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. So I know we talked a little bit about this at the Seattle meetup in 2019 when you and I got together, but what kind of impact does this community actually have on GMK right now? Because I feel like until maybe a year or two ago, we were kind of just barely nothing in terms of GMK's actual revenue. But nowadays, when we have so many sets, you know, we see interest checks and group buys by the dozen every single week nowadays.
Yeah.
Do we actually, you know, count as
Yeah.
a larger portion of GMK's revenue these days?
It does. I don't have the official numbers, but off the top of my head, probably somewhere closer to 30%.
That's a pretty large percentage compared to how it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that GMK is much bigger than just caps, right? So we have a lot of industrial clients where we make everything from actual hardware, software. The whole injection molding keycap thing was kind of on the side. Basically, Cherry was getting out of the business. We inherited their molds and their clients because there are some larger clients and they just, you know, place bucket orders of caps like every year. They just order these caps. So I'm not even counting that as part of the enthusiast community percentage. I mean, that's a big part of the industrial side, but yeah, I mean, it's big. And I think a lot of it was even well before I was even working for them. They just noticed that the market was growing and they were willing to take the risk to invest in, you know, more machines to be able to make caps faster and not get far behind, and invest in the packaging and custom colors and things like that. I think they just saw the potential, which is actually pretty cool of a company to be able to see, I think, and invest in the future of the community in a way.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, with that in mind, I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about maybe some of the plans that GMK has for the future. Obviously, we've been seeing quite an explosion of GMK sets lately, and I'm sure GMK is very busy producing keycaps for our community and otherwise. But just like we were talking about in Seattle, we were talking about a few other things as well. This was obviously before the new trays came out. So let's talk a little bit about the trays, because, you know, they seem a little controversial right now. It does, I think we can all agree that the more economic solution, you know, being friendlier to the environment is of course a plus. Big thumbs up on that. But it seems like some of the new trays potentially have other issues as well. So how do you feel like that's going right now?
You know, I think, of course, I stand behind being, you know, looking out for the environment first. That was definitely something that was very important to us. So when we were looking at how to be more environmentally friendly, we needed a whole redesign anyway, right? So smaller, more compact profile of packaging, I think, was really important. It was the elongated trays that we've used up until now just suck to ship, you know, like game board box USPS seems to be the most popular way. That's $20 to ship. And it's just huge, and there's way more room in the box than is needed. So we looked around at some footprints and sizes of boxes that would be better for vendors. So after we had the size, the material was next, and we found a really cool place that essentially uses potatoes to they basically have a mold and they inject it like plastic. So it's an all natural material that's essentially made out of potatoes, and it'll biodegrade in a few days.
That's awesome. I had no idea that's what it was made out of.
I mean, technically you could put it in water and eat it a couple days later. I'm not going to recommend it, but it wouldn't.
So if this turns into a zombie apocalypse, we can eat our new GMK trays.
Yeah. So of course the flip side is there's always little issues. I heard some people had some cracked ones, or that, you know, there needs to be a top, a better top. So we've already started looking into all of that. I think it's a lot like the Triumph Adler, how you mentioned. You know, that was kind of a shot in the dark. If people don't remember that.
Is that when the tray kind of first made the debut?
Yeah, that was the first tray too.
Okay.
So Triumph Adler, it was a mass buy. The first one with trays, as far as I remember, I think it was, and the first one with custom colors. And so there was some swirling effects in the colors. We don't actually mix the colors. Now the custom colors. we just placed the order for the colors. But yeah, there was some swirling. But the big thing I think that was bad there was the top. We didn't have the white pins in the trays that, those things suck. I hate those things.
They're awful. They're so bad.
And so people know we actually have to put all those in by hand when shipping sets. So that was another big thing. Like, we wanted to get rid of that. We can speed up shipping sets because we're not putting in the stupid knobs. But yeah, they didn't have those. So when we originally packaged the pallet, they were all on top of each other. They shipped fine, but then when they were in the box, there was room for the caps to come out. So I think basically everybody's caps came out during shipping in that buy, leading to the white tabs and kind of a redesign of the trays. So that was fixed by the next buy, and I think the same thing will happen here. It's hard to test. I mean, we ship back and forth stuff, and they did their testing pretty well there, but obviously you find things when you're shipping out to 2,000 people or whatever. So there is on Geekhack, there's a GMK vendor section, and I'll make sure there is a feedback for the new trays as well. So we definitely do want to hear if people do have issues with the trays. I know we're already looking at double wrapping. That's already happening, like double shrinking them so the caps don't move during shipment. But
yeah, I was kind of curious to know what kind of measures you guys are planning on taking on improving them. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I of course, obviously, I appreciate the economical factor, but I've had experience with one of these trays, just like a lot of other people. The keycaps that I'm using right now was one of the first sets, if not the first set, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it the
8008?
Yeah, 8008.
Yeah, so I think that was the first kind of debut of the new package, or the new trays, rather. And I gotta be honest. When I opened it up, all the caps were kind of strewn about, especially on the top level. Some of them were stacked. I looked over them. I didn't really see any damage, which is good. But there is always obviously a potential for damage when you,
of course, especially if you're shipping it to like 2,000 people, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of agree with a lot of the vendors these days that at least something to hold that top down would probably be really, really a big step in the right direction.
So the fix that could happen immediately was more shrink wrap while we work on a permanent fix, but that would make sure that doesn't happen in the meantime. But I know they're already working pretty hard on a more permanent fix based on the feedback we've gotten. So hopefully we have that soon to announce what that'll entail and look like.
Yeah. So another one of the topics that I know we talked a little bit at length over some drinks in Seattle was something like a GMK catalog, for example. So maybe some kind of website or page that lists maybe everything that GMK has done, maybe upcoming projects. Maybe what I really want to see is what's available through GMK. So maybe a list of what kind of legends and molds are available to some of these designers that they wouldn't otherwise know existed. Because GMK actually has an insane amount of molds. A truly insane amount of molds. With all different languages and sub-legends and etc. And it'd be kind of nice to see a localized place where people can just be like, oh, they have that. I'm going to try that out, Could that be in the works?
This is something we've been working on, and, before the whole COVID-19 thing was getting closer. So now I've been kind of compiling that more myself. But it takes time because I don't have access to all the stuff in Germany. So there's so many molds that people don't even know we have. And a lot of the ones we inherited from Cherry are actually, we have the molds obviously with all the machines, but for reference, we have books, and the Cherry legends are actually hand drawn. So you don't even know exactly what it is. I mean, that's how it was back in the day. Just, people weren't looking or caring about fonts. They just saw a hand drawn A and B or whatever. And, they could use that. But now we have obviously multiple languages, multiple types of modifiers, text, symbols, all the good stuff that people like to argue about. Same with homing keys. So we are looking at compiling and basically serializing the legend types that we have. So new designers, say you submit something like KLE, very basic, of course, doesn't have our custom font. It's not needed. So essentially you could submit something like that and say, I want reference number ABC as the legends for the modifiers and reference BCE for the alphas and so forth, because there are so many options now. So that is something that will pop up on our internal information right off of our unique.zendesk.com, where all our basically FAQs are hosted.
Awesome. Sounds pretty good. So, I mean, obviously now with GMK taking on so many more orders from the enthusiast community, do you think there are maybe certain things that might make a key set designer better or worse per se? Are there designs that GMK just gets and is like, really, really?
Yeah, the only time I think I ever even thought that was not even GMK, I don't think. I remember helping Massdrop with the we're gonna make a custom keycap set based on community input. Let's have everybody submit stuff. And wasn't well enough thought through. I mean, you can't just submit a design, Signature Plastics can make things that we can't, and vice versa. They have all the dye sub abilities, or even laser printing. We do that. So people were just submitting all kinds of weird shit that I don't remember which one got made. I just remember it was one of those like, really, this is what won? Like there was some really cool stuff in there. I remember that BIP guy. BIP.
BIP.
Yeah, he did some really cool Apple one, which I think was really sleek. One of the better, more professionally presented designs during that. It lost out to whatever the hell won. It was like, a unicorn shit. But as far as like what we've gotten, I don't think there's anything crazy like that. And I try pretty hard not to judge designs based on how complex or simple they are. I think that's, I mean, personally, I'm super into simple, kind of where Honeywell came from. And
I feel you,
all of my keyboards are just beige or Honeywell or something super simple. I love the looks of some of the other ones, like Metropolis really stands out. I love that. I can't use something like that every day. It's just too noisy for me. But same with a lot of Rick sets, or Mito. People that don't know his name, like,
is it pronounced Mito?
Mito. I don't know. I should ask him. I just call him Rick.
I've technically had him on the show before, but I still don't know how to say his name. I forgot.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of his stuff obviously now is like borderline iconic, right? But
yeah, he's certainly one of. I would say he's a controversial designer in the hobby to some people, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think he's incredibly passionate, and sometimes that can lead to high tension.
Oh, for sure. And I just know from working in big studios in Nashville that people that really, really are very artistic, I mean, they have very strong opinions on some of their stuff. So that's something I've always been able to kind of look past. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, that's why we've been friends for so long. I think that passion really is what makes things so good. I mean, he has an eye for color that I just don't have. I can look at something that he's done, or a lot of these other designers have done, and really see why it's great, but I could never come up with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of designers are just doing really cool stuff. And again, it's not the most complex. It's not who can use the most colors or come up with the best novelties. I mean, sometimes I think the best sets are the simplest ones that, they seem so obvious, and that's why it's awesome to me, because it is just two colors. And, I'm thinking 10 years later, why has nobody done this before? So I don't think designers should judge themselves or each other based on what other people are doing.
Yeah. Speaking of 10 years later, though, where do you kind of see the community moving over the next 5 or 10 years? Because obviously, we're growing at a pretty high rate, and we're seeing a lot of changes happening throughout the community, like we've already talked about, based on what's happened over the last 10 years. It's a monumental change over the last 10 years. It really is day and night. And do you think that's going to be the same case 10 years from now?
And I'm sure it's going to keep changing. At what rate? It's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to keep up now with everything that's coming out. I mean, every day it seems like there's a new Switch, there's a new custom keyboard, there's new keycap designs. I mean, it's
not an exaggeration either. Like every day that's happening.
No,
every day.
I mean, I used to buy every custom keyboard that came out when there was only, a couple Koreans doing it, but you never miss those buys because it was so rare that any custom keyboard was in the
Yeah.
actual group buy stage where you can sign up and pay for it, right?
Yeah, you knew about it
Now,
months in advance, and now a lot of the group buys are like single Discord exclusive. You have to be at the right place in the right time, and you have to enter all this information in the first 20 seconds. Otherwise, the other 1,000 people are going to get it before you. And
yep,
it's a wild time.
it's totally crazy. I mean, I don't think if you would have asked me even 2 years ago if I saw it exploding this much that I would have had the foresight to see that it's gotten as expansive as it is today. So, I mean, I hope the next 10 years continue to surprise. I think a lot of things that will change more are, and we're seeing some of it now, where group buys are kind of being phased out a little bit. I mean, there's enough people in the community that you can obviously support the MOQ of just about anything you do if it has, solid bones and common sense behind it, be it a keyboard, keycaps, a new profile, whatever. I think there's clearly people willing to support just about anything if it's done well. So um, a big part of it, I think, is just going to be to have it grow more. You have to come up with ways where group buy kind of goes away, and the more instant fulfillment can happen, which is just whole our society now, the Amazon 2-day shipping society, right? So many people are just turned off by even waiting a week, much less months, or join a 7-bit buy and you might wait a few years. Ellipses, Model Fs.
Yeah.
People just aren't cool waiting for years. Where I think a lot of the 5+ year members of the community don't think twice about it. But that's how it's got to grow. And a lot of these vendors now are doing really well with their turnaround time is insane. I don't know how some of them do it, honestly, when they wait for the caps or the boards to ship and they have it shipped to 2,000 people within a week. And that's just kudos to them for really pushing forward to getting people their stuff quicker. Where back in the day it was very much like, I'm going to sort 5 sets tonight and then eat dinner, and
Yeah.
we're going to do this for 8 months where I sort 5 sets a day and ship it, and people will get it 8 months ahead of you, and you can't complain about it because this is what you signed up for. So I think people are going to be less forgiving about that in the future, which is already clear. People want their stuff as quickly as possible. Yeah. I can't say I blame them. So
I think a lot of the difference, honestly, is that 5-10 years ago you didn't really have full-time vendors, and now we have quite a few full-time vendors and even a couple full-time content creators and such. So 6-7 years ago this wasn't really a thought, but nowadays people are making keyboards their livelihood.
Yeah, I think back then it was, as far as community goes, it was Originative.
Was Originative full-time at the beginning though?
No. But I mean, he was one of the only, and Tech Keys was another good one.
That's a throwback. Yeah.
So Tech Keys and Originative. Yeah, you didn't have many sites. I mean, you used to be able to browse every vendor's site within 5 minutes.
Yeah, you would know of everything happening in the community in about 5 or 10 minutes of searching. And nowadays,
3 forums, 3 vendors, and you're done. Yeah. That's it.
And I mean, I spend hours on Geekhack and Reddit and Discord every single week, and like I still know like very little of what's happening. It feels like sometimes I try so hard to keep up, but it's like you just can't these days because so many things are like exclusive to tiny portions or discords of the community, and it's just not possible to keep up with like every design, especially when like we said, there's designs coming out every single day.
But I think it's kind of cool. I mean, some people obviously want to be able to get their hands on everything, but I find it really interesting when now I go to meetups and I'll see a board that I have no idea existed. It's just like that hasn't happened in so long. Usually I would know everything that I'd see, and now it's just insane how much stuff I don't even know existed before I was at a meetup looking at it or browsing.
Remember when we just had OTD and KMAC? Those were like the premium high tier customs. Those were the only customs, really.
Yeah, other than the first sandwich board. The acrylic,
Gone.
when
Remember
keyless and
Gone?
gone, yeah. So gone
Windkeyless.kr
and
and
when
Gone.
keyless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that there was them too, which
What was sorry to ramble here, but I've been trying to figure this out for weeks. The guy that ran Windkeyless.kr, what was his name?
oh yeah.
I
I
remember
used to
it.
talk to
I,
them
I
all.
used to know it, but it's been driving me nuts, and like nobody seems to remember it. Hopefully, someone in Twitch chat can remember it.
I can dig through my emails when we're doing
I
Q&A.
mean, it's not a big
Right?
deal. I wouldn't mind actually chatting with him a little bit, but I mean, it's not a big deal either way. But it was
Yeah, I
interesting
mean,
because when those boards, like you're mentioning, the layered acrylic, Korean customs or whatever you want to call them, they exploded in popularity because they were just it was so customizable, so accessible. It was quick and it was inexpensive because it was just layered acrylic. And honestly, those boards felt, sounded, and looked pretty good for the time.
and I would still argue that a lot of acrylic boards aren't quite up to the standards that those used to be. I mean, it was never my thing personally, but uh, I did have at least one or two from each of them, and they felt really good. And in the years past or since, I've gotten a few acrylic sandwich boards because that's for some of the early weird layouts and for a sense like that was the only viable way to do it, and they never really felt as good as some of those old Gons or Win keyless boards actually felt. So yeah, yeah, it was a very niche part even back then, I feel like, but
It's
that
interesting
was
now because Windkeyless.kr, it was only maybe 6 months ago or so that they completely closed their doors entirely because they couldn't compete with
yeah, I
what else
remember
was happening right now.
I remember what they said in like their announcement for why it was happening. And it's sad, but I can totally understand why that was the case. I mean, they were just getting completely undersold by really cheap Chinese customs that some of them felt pretty okay and some of them are just total rubbish. I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
when you're
just
yeah when you're spending like $40 or $50 on a stacked acrylic keyboard, especially when it comes with a PCB, it's not always going to be very high quality. But a lot of people defaulted to that because they don't have a lot of money. Taobao and AliExpress and all these sites that resell these very inexpensive parts. It's a good option for some people, but it's unfortunate because then people like Windkeyless.kr that is a little bit more OG at this in the community,
oh, for sure,
get
and just
ran out
better
of
quality.
business. And of course,
Yep.
that's business, but it's still unfortunate to see. Hojin also, I believe was his name. People in chat are typing in there now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
He was a cool dude, and he was doing a lot of cool stuff at the time.
for sure.
But he just got left out in the dust because of how fast the hobby has been evolving, and how much how cheap a lot of the products are for people these days, and how easily you can get your hands on some of this stuff.
Well, I mean, so that's just the way it goes, right? I mean, I was talking to a vendor that, well, I'll just call him a vendor for now. And they were saying like, hey, I know somebody that's going to make cherry keycaps in China for, half the cost that you make them for. And there's things like JTK, and I can't fault people for not having $100 to spend on keycaps, right? Like I don't expect everybody to do that. That's a significant investment, I'd say.
Well, yeah, I mean, GMK in particular has always been, to our community, the more premium option. That was like your big boy stuff, like.
And it's sure we could do it a little cheaper if we outsourced it, but it is all made in Germany. Getting paid well, everybody's being treated well. It's not a cheap thing to do. So there are going to be cheaper alternatives. I can't ever fault people for looking for cheaper alternatives. And in a lot of ways, it's up to businesses, say like GMK, to kind of assess, do we need to change anything, or are we doing enough, making the best quality caps that we can, and hopefully better than these other places. People seem to still want it. So I think there's always room, and against the cheaper stuff. Like I did Jukebox couple years back on Cubic profile with Tai Hao, and I never really wanted to do something like that, but people had shown interest, and I didn't also want to hoard my set because I didn't want other people tend to want it, and I like the idea of working with somebody like him just to be able to come out with something that's kind of custom, but also affordable for people that just don't want to spend that money on custom caps. I mean, I think if somebody wants to enjoy the hobby for under $100 and get a custom keyboard and custom keycaps, that's great. I mean, that's one more person that maybe 10 years down the road or 2 years down the road, they're going to be somebody that's joining the group buys for the big custom keyboards, or the next Signature Plastics buy. So
it's a barrier of entry, and it's something I try to
that's business.
Yeah, and I try to instill it in people's minds too, that like, a lot of the people that watch this show, for instance, even a lot of people like you and I, and we can spend $200, $300, $500 on a keyboard and like not bat an eye, because like that's kind of normal to people like us. That's what we're used to seeing. But brand new people come into the hobby and they see this and they're like, what? Like we look at a $100 GMK set and we're like, value. That is banging. I don't even care what the color is. I'm buying it because it's only $100.
Yep, and I think one of the best sources of the difference in this was the comment section on Mass Drop. I'd say around their peak, probably 2 years ago, when they had tons of GMK, also tons of just cheap shit, right? Like, when the average person that lands on a site like that comes across something where here's a keycap set for $39 and here's one for $69, to the average person that doesn't know the ins and outs of the hobby, it's absurd. Like, I can completely see that point of view. So I think it's just cool that there is the options available now where people can basically pick what they want to spend and spend within their budget. And people like us, if we want to spend $500 making a keyboard that we really want, we don't have price tag shock, right? Like you're not going to be shocked to see a board for $700.
Yeah, I mean we see so many boards on the aftermarket now. A lot of the TGR stuff, a lot of the Keycult stuff, and even some other designers and vendors have products out there that are just commanding $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 price tags for a custom keyboard,
which is nuts. Like, aftermarket is a whole other thing.
Yeah, like 3 years ago, nobody would have thought that we would have had $1,000 class keyboards, and now like people don't bat an eye. I mean, I see people on Mech Markets willing to spend $2,000-$3,000 on a Keycult board, and it's interesting to me that we've kind of made that next step apparently, and so many people in the hobby it seems to have a lot of money to spend on stuff like this, and more power to them, of course, if that's what they want. It's just it's kind of interesting that we seem to have maybe more disposable income throughout this hobby than we even thought prior. And
I agree. It's still shocking to me sometimes too. Like, now I'm kind of at the point, I went through my stage. I bought everything. I'll pretty much only buy something that I really want now. I used to just buy everything because that was easy to buy everything.
You could, yeah.
Buying a couple things a year, so I was still spending less then than probably what I'd spend on one board a year now. But I do make sure it's something that's just like really cool or unique or whatever. But that's also great because there's still things coming out for people like me that have kind of seen a lot more than maybe some people are owned a lot. I mean, I had at my peak probably 500 keyboards in my collection. A lot of vintage too. I was really into vintage before I even got into the custom stuff. But so it's great that I can still find stuff, but it's also really cool that maybe my friends from other hobbies or other jobs can get into a keyboard for quite cheap. I know at my last job, actually, the one in Salt Lake I mentioned, of course, I had keyboards in my office all the time, and we bought a ton of TKC boards for people in the office just to have because it was cool for them to be able to pick their switches. I love the 1800 layout. Still, I'm always trying to get people to like, this is the real full-size layout. So it was cool to be able to like do something like that, where I'd say that's a really cool custom. The paint jobs were great. I love that they weren't metal and too heavy, and for a work environment like that, they worked well. And people had a lot of fun getting into that kind of thing. And it's great that there is so many products in the mid-range for people to get into.
Yeah, that's one thing I've been trying to ask for a long time is, we need a lot more custom keyboards in that like $100 to $200 range, and now we're starting to actually see them. The
Yeah, and
barrier of
now
entry
with
is pretty good. A lot of people have a lot of options when they enter the hobby now at a lot of different price points, and that just wasn't the case before. So I
no,
think
it was either shitty and really cheap or absurdly expensive. So now we've really filled out that mid-range section, I think, well.
for sure. Well, I'd be a little remiss if I didn't try to bring up some drama here, of course. So let's talk a little bit about some of the potential tolerance issues that have been going on with GMK. I know, some of this is maybe a little bit more private, some of it maybe not, but I know on some of the GMK Olive sets, for example, people complaining about crooked keys. We had a recent GMK white on black, I think it was, extension kit that might have had some
Yes,
legend
that one.
inconsistencies.
Yeah, I can definitely speak on that one a bit more. Uh, I think the threads on Geekhack, at least what I'm looking at, the white on black thread that Necromance
Sure.
ran. So basically, what we've noticed internally, at least, is initially our standards were just inherited straight from Cherry, what their standards were, um, and that's what the people were checking. So normal, on a normal run, 97% of the caps great, another maybe 2% still in Cherry standards, but for enthusiasts now we're realizing that could be a problem. They're looking at their caps in ways that our industrial clients simply don't look at them.
Yeah. So would you
Um,
say currently maybe it's more of a community mindset versus the actual tolerance is changing with GMK? Maybe there's people
yeah,
that
I
didn't notice it
mean,
before. Because is GMK's quality the same as it has been for the last 5-6 years?
yeah, I mean, if anything, they're getting better. I mean, there's very few people that run the machines, and every time you change something, there is a lot of manual setup that goes into these machines. It's not quite as, we're not using hand presses like some companies, but it's much more human uh, experience than most people know. So uh, I definitely wouldn't say that like tolerances or anything have gone downhill. If anything, I think they're just being uh, people are looking a lot closer at their caps, and
Yeah. And
for better or for worse.
you guys are also putting out a lot more product to our community than it used to be as well. So now that you're shipping, double, triple, or quadruple the numbers that you used to,
Yep. And
that 1% issue or 2% issue or 3% issue starts to seem a little bit more pertinent when you have so many sets in the wild.
oh, for sure. I mean, it's much different now. Shipping two, three, 5,000 sets out the door a week as opposed to a few hundred a week. Um, Still, everything should remain up the quality standards. So I think a big thing too that was really lacking is what should expectations be, and trying to let people know about the process a little more, which until now we haven't really made public. Um, so there is a post that we've made on the white on black set, um, kind of explaining here's what to expect. Here's good, here's bad. We are replacing some of the caps in that. We're just going to go ahead and replace them. Um, there are things, even like the twisted stems, though. You mentioned that one. So these are very hard for us to judge based on pictures. We can, people say one fits, one doesn't, but with all the plates, like who knows where you're getting your plates from? People are building switches from, they're taking holy pandas and black mambas and kales and cherries, and maybe trying to cram an Alp Spring into it. Like I've just seen some bonkers shit. So it's hard with all these other parts. Like when they're saying there's stem twist, it's hard for pictures. I'm not saying nothing is a problem there at all by any means. I'm just saying, posting a picture doesn't really say everything. So we are looking at a way to get people, especially now with me in the US, I can assess things much quicker, shipping to me. So we're looking at things for that, for issues like that. But as far as issues, I'm trying to pull up the Geek Hack thread here. So we are essentially saying in the thread, though, that we're going to raise our tolerances internally just more than Cherry, knowing that a lot of our enthusiasts That's something important, and we do understand that the enthusiasts are going to look at it different than our industrial clients. So tolerances are actually going to be raised a bit, but we're also setting expectations at the same time for what is and isn't, an issue. Because again, it's not going to be laser cut perfect every time. That's just not how the whole injection molding process works.
Yeah. So maybe people expecting a little too much. And maybe it's just because a lot of us are quarantined these days, so everyone's getting a little bit more into the science aspect. Obviously, a hobby like this, we're kind of fortunate because we have a lot of first world problems. We spend most of our days arguing about the compositions of plastics on custom switches, or colorways versus other colorways, or these 0.01 millimeter issues and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that we want to make sure that you enjoy what you have. Again, I'll make sure there is a dedicated section just for maybe general cap issues or questions on our GCAC vendor board. After this, we want to see what's going on, but I think a lot of times maybe what happens is that one person does get a genuinely bad cap that would not really be up to standards, and I think that is very low when you look at the cap shipped. It does happen. We're not perfect. Then I think other people see it and they start really trying to, analyze their board way too close and finding any little slight variation. I think that might be where the problem is. And
yeah, there's a big difference between casual use case versus putting everything under a scrutiny microscope.
Right. And I mean, I know it's really hard to get anything unless you're doing laser etched legends. There are going to be slight variations in dye sub and injection molded. Everything does have some slight there. Again, there should be a very set tolerance, and I think it's important that people know what these tolerances are, and that's something that I don't think has really been made public to anybody, just because nobody really thought of it. I mean, same with like SP or GMK, even things like MT3, it's pretty much like glaring issues replaced, but the little ones, they're just in the tolerances. So I think it's very important, though, through this, especially the last couple of sets that people have mentioned, like Olivia or White on Black, that it's important for us to see what people are seeing or thinking it's a problem. It's also important for us to make these expectations known, and obviously we want to see what people are saying, because if there is something that can be improved, we'll improve it. If it's a legend that looks like it's going bad, we have the ability to make them internally now. So we're not, a lot of people don't know, we used to have to get legends made out of stainless steel, and we had to place the order and somebody else would make it. And now we can actually cut our own legends in-house. So if something looks like maybe the legend has a problem, we can and we will make a new legend for that basically immediately.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in the defense of the community, at least, GMK has always kind of been the gold standard of keycaps for many years in our community now, and no one's really batted an eye or argued against that. And maybe now I think people are starting to get a little bit more critical about their products, but I don't think it's right to expect perfection 100% of the time from GMK or otherwise. Because at the end of the day, we're all here for a hobby, and for a lot of us this isn't exactly our job, but it's kind of interesting. But as far as other tolerance issues, I think one that a lot of us can agree on is maybe some of the issues that the GMK branded stabilizers have been having. So for a long time, similar to the keycaps, a lot of the GMK stabilizers were also kind of seen as the gold standard for your stabilizer experience.
As of today, there is not such thing as a GMK stabilizer. They were all made by Cherry, and Cherry essentially just kept making those. We took over their caps. They made the stabilizers, and other than going to big clients, Logitech or Razer or whoever, probably not Razer. I think they make all their stuff in some Chinese basement. But a lot of their caps or their stabilizers are basically, we were selling them directly. So they did change their stabilizers. What was that, like 6 months ago or something? They updated them. I mean, when everybody started complaining about,
yeah, it's about 6-8 months ago, probably.
Right. So there was a change, and they didn't tell anybody. So they didn't tell us either. And I don't think people were being too picky with that issue. I mean, I know stabilizers really, really affect how typing on a keyboard is. I mean, much more than thinking that a legend is a little crooked or maybe the cap's not, you know.
Oh yeah. If your spacebar
doesn't affect your typing, but a stabilizer really affects the experience. It's also like a 90-cent product that can ruin a $900 keyboard. So when that happened and Cherry changed it, we realized that, you know, this is a product that we don't have the level of control over that we want, and immediately started designing our own, which are almost done.
Okay, so we're about to see brand new GMK stabilizers then.
So you're about to see the first actual stabilizers with the GMK name and standards attached to it.
Gotcha. So finally, GMK manufactured stabilizers. Yep. Are you going to be? I mean, obviously you don't have to answer any of this if you can't. But are you going to be using maybe different designs, or are you just going to be kind of upgrading what Cherry has already been doing?
No, so this is not a clone of a Cherry. One thing that was, of course, very important is that the footprint has to stay the same. It would be stupid to make people change their plate cutouts or their PCB mounts for new stabs. I just don't really see that happening. That being said, we do have parts in ours that are very different than others. So as far as interchanging parts with our stabs and other stabs, that won't be a thing. But we engineered them for quite a bit to be silent right from the get-go. You shouldn't have to clip them, trim anything. They should just be great out of the box. We essentially wanted to make a product that would not have to be touched or modified by end users. Stick on a board. They just work. Which for a stabilizer, I think it's basically, if you don't realize it's there, it's doing its job, right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
That's the whole point. There's not like, oh, I want this sound or that sound or this color, and you just want a stabilizer that works and gets the job done with as little effort as possible.
I can't imagine a world without lubing stabilizers.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, it's like the worst part of most builds is finding a stabilizer that works, or having stabilizer issues. Like, I know I had a ton of problems with certain branded stabilizers from vendors in the past where the wire would just pop out. And for some boards, that can be a huge problem trying to pop it back in without, a lot of work. So
yeah,
especially we did make a lot of changes to look out for these kinds of issues as well.
Yeah. Especially for a lot of maybe some of the newer people in the hobby. I know when I was newer, when stabilizer wires popped out, it was like the most frightening thing. But nowadays, like you just kind of weave a small pair of tweezers in there, and you kind of do some really awkward things.
Maybe you have to desolder a single switch or something. Or now with hot swap, it's less of an issue. But still, I mean, it just sucks. So we were kind of caught off guard by that change that Cherry made as well. And of course, in Cherry's defense, they just thought they were making a slight improvement. They don't really think about, these are for gaming and industrial boards also. Nobody thinks about stabilizers in any other community but this one.
This is actually something I wanted to expand upon a little bit. Yeah, because for a while now we're all kind of familiar with the concept of retooled Cherry switches. That's been a term that the community's been using for years now. Cherry put out new molds for their a lot of their switches, MX Blacks most notably, a few years ago, and Cherry Blacks have kind of historically always been a very unsmooth switch. And, when they retooled the modes, it got a lot smoother. A lot of people in our hobby really do care about smoothness in their switches. It's a really big factor for a lot of people. So, these new retooled Cherry switches came out, and, it was a big deal. A lot of people liked it. But a lot of vendors that were getting a lot of these new ones, were starting to get them mixed in with previous Cherry Blacks that maybe weren't retooled. Because, when you think about it, what does Cherry think about? They think it's a Cherry MX Black Switch. They might have batch numbers, of course, and stuff like that. But like, the retooled is a term that they don't really use. It's more of a community term for us.
Absolutely.
To them, you know, the old Cherry Black and the new Cherry Black are both Cherry Blacks. But to a lot of enthusiasts like us, it's a night and day difference when you're actually using them. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure, yeah, in the Cherry catalog, they have different SKUs or whatever they use, but they don't think to tell us that. And I totally get why, because 90%, 95% of the people using it won't be able to tell a difference. So in hindsight, too, with the retooling of Blacks and some others, thinking they might do that to their stabilizers probably should have crossed all of our minds sooner than it did.
Yeah. But again, to Cherry, like, their new stabilizers, presumably at least, are still in spec, and like that's fine. They're still their Cherry stabilizers. It doesn't register to them because they're not into our community,
and they're not broken. They do work.
Yes,
like, it's not a faulty product. It's also not as good as their previous ones. You know, they probably just thought they were improving it, making it better, time for new molds, whatever it might be. And people were having problems with it. So, you know, that was a kind of a wake-up call, thinking we're not really comfortable with something like this where we don't have the control over quality and consistency that we would want to have. So yeah, we started making our own very quickly after that.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'm sure, like a lot of people, I'm super excited to see the new stabilizer design, because I feel like, you know, I rant about this on the main Top Clack show a lot, but you know, we're still using all this technology that is 4, 5, 6 decades old now. All these switches, you know, the double shot keycaps, the stabilizers. None of this is new, and the fact that everyone accepts this as like the ideal outcome is strange to me, that we're not like looking towards the future. And I know I bring up this point a lot too, like you know, over at Input Club, Hata has been working with Kale. They're designing, you know, a new a new kind of switch, a new magnetic Hall effect kind of technology thing, like from the ground up, and that's the kind of thing that is not really that interesting to a lot of people in the hobby, and it's kind of sad, because to me, like, that's cool. Like, the future of keyboards, like, is coming. Like, we're always going to have new things on the horizon, but like, how long are we going to use this 60-year-old technology and love it?
For sure. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, how Cherry MX became the standard is kind of, I mean, I get it. It's very cost effective. It's also inherently got problems that can never be fixed, just based on the size of the switches. I mean, in my opinion, compared to some other older switches, MXs are just always going to be subpar. Not that they can't be great, but as far as being the best, they're not there. So I think it's, you know, now the important thing really is the stem. That's probably the thing that has to carry over, much like stabilizers having the same footprint.
Yeah, you have to have that level.
Probably change. You can probably make something amazing with an entirely different footprint, but now you're going to have to change the PCBs, the plates, possibly the cases. It's a big ask, and it's, you know, that's a really big risk for either a small vendor or a big company to take. Regardless, that's a huge risk. So I think it is a weird time working with, you know, what you said. We're working within the confines of technology that's decades old, and trying to make that better for now. And a lot of it, I think, is great. I mean, having the MX as smaller switches than, say, a beam spring, way more cost effective, way more, you know, things you can do with a keyboard with a smaller switch like that. But it is great. I mean, Hata, of course, his work with Input Club is insane. Like, that's some really exciting stuff, I think.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I think now's as good a time as any to throw it over to the Twitch chat a little bit and do a brief Q&A. It's not going to be a super long one, but we'll answer questions for about 10 or 15 minutes. So if you guys have questions, you know, about GMK for Andy, Livingspeedbump here, please put them in the chat. if you have a question specifically for me, save it. Join the Discord if you're not already a part of it, and ask me there. This show is all about Andy and GMK, so
I
try to
can't see
keep
the chat, so you just relay
Yes,
them.
I will absolutely relay the questions for you. So
pick the worst, most damning ones.
Worst questions. All right, you heard it here first, guys. Let's do this. Nothing that gets us banned on Twitch, though, of course. So yeah, use the @TopClack tag as well, so I can pick the questions out from chat a lot easier. That's very important. Otherwise, I'll probably just skip right over your question. If I
no idea what you just said, but do it.
It's fine. I'm just talking to Twitch chat a little bit. Forgets to tag us, but since it is the first question, I didn't notice it. Claygore is asking, what mic is LSB using?
This is. Ooh, I have to look it up. If you haven't noticed, I have like music stuff everywhere. This is a Little B. Not a great mic. I wouldn't go out of your way to buy it. Yeah, a Worker B cardioid.
What's the price on one of those?
I think this is actually a sub $100 mic. I bought a bunch of them just to have when I need extra mics that aren't my main expensive mics for drum overheads or additional guitar cabinets or something. But it's also nice to keep the cheap shit out when you have cats that will literally knock everything over. Cats knocking a nice ribbon mic or something or so. For under $100, so I think it sounds pretty good.
It's honestly pretty decent.
It's not a bad mic.
Cool. Nebulant with our next question here, asking, is GMK USA expanding? How does one get involved with a company like that?
Yeah, so basically, that's actually a really good question, something we didn't touch. So there's GMK, GmbH, basically what we, that is GMK, the German company. So I'm actually running a company registered as GMK Incorporated. We're a totally kind of separate entity in the US, with the big point of this being within a few, hopefully much sooner than later, we will be able to ship directly from the US, from the web store. That was initially why we're doing this. We want to be able to, we don't expect anybody to buy stuff off a German website and, you know, pay the taxes and shipping and wait time to get something like, say, the stabilizers in the US. It just doesn't make sense. So being able to ship from the US in our web store with, you know, our keyboards and our internal keycap sets was a big part of it. But then it's also nice to have someone in the US where, let's say, somebody thinks they have a problem with some caps. Well, you can, you know, I'll send you a label and you can send them to me and I can assess them and get them back to you within a matter of days, as opposed to a matter of weeks trying to go to the German office. So it just made sense with the expanding community. Again, I think best from GMK to do this, where it's not necessarily a profitable thing for them, I'd say, but it's hopefully helps out the community long term and makes it easier. Yeah.
I think he's also asking, how does one get involved with a company like that? Maybe he's looking for a position, perhaps. All right, do you guys plan on expanding, you know, the workforce there in GMK USA?
I mean, I would definitely hope so eventually. Right now, I have some help here and there, but it's basically just me, and I do have my first little tyke on the way, so I'm very busy. I'll sleep slightly less than I do now, which is basically already 0. So I'm curious how that'll be, but I don't know how to tell you how to get directly involved yet. But I mean, of course, we do hope to expand into something larger here in the US as well.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people interested in working with GMK, so wouldn't be surprised.
I would recommend. I mean, they've, on a company level, I'm not talking keycaps or keyboards right now, just as far as how they treat people, it's ridiculous. I mean, I was talking with my wife last night about, you know, we've moved around a lot. We were talking about, like, where do we like to live, and, you know, right now we basically are happily stuck in Washington, but stuck here because this is where the company's registered. But how we're both just really happy about that. I mean, they treat me like family. You know, they're one of the few companies that, at least I've seen. I mean, I've only worked for U.S. companies prior, like probably most people, but I've never seen a company that's so quick to put people ahead of profits, or if somebody really needs help, or I never feel like I'm getting left in the dust or anything by them. So it's definitely more of uh, I mean, that's why I like the job more than maybe the day-to-day stuff is, probably not what people expect. It is definitely a lot of work, not a lot of hobbying. But just the fact that I'm working with such great people, I think that's what makes the job for me.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. On the Top Clack account, my co-host is asking a question from Jay here. How is development on the new GMK head office going in Germany?
Ooh, good one. I think pretty well. I actually haven't asked about that a bit. I know they've started. I don't know how, the whole COVID thing has affected that, but yeah, I'm actually really excited. I think by the time I go there next, it should be done. So yeah, for people that don't know, we're essentially expanding our head office space in Germany. I think it's doubling the space. I know it's quite an expansion. So yeah, that's definitely an exciting thing that's kind of been happening in the background as well.
For sure, for sure. Um, Milk Manu is asking, what kind of milk do you like? Are you much of a milk
I
drinker?
don't know. I'm lactose intolerant, so that is
There you
why
go.
would you ask me that? That's so mean. Jeez.
Feels bad.
I want to like milk. I want to go back and love my whole percent milk.
Oh
That
yeah,
full fatty milk is
I
delicious.
had some of that earlier. It was nice.
I can't have it. So
Don't worry,
good.
I can have enough for you. It'll be totally fine. Frisco Melt asking, how did stabilizers become known as quote unquote GMK if you haven't actually produced them? Rebranding
Yeah,
stuff is pretty standard business practice.
yeah. I don't even think we were rebranding. They were just getting shipped in those GMK branded bags that you mentioned. If you looked at the stabs, they were all Cherry branded, not GMK branded. And that was a thing. I think I've made multiple comments on Mass Drop over the years, like these aren't GMK stabs, they're Cherry stabs. We're just selling it for them because they don't otherwise sell. We were essentially proxying it for the community. They weren't really big on just selling it to little guys with little MOQs. So I think a lot of people were getting the stabs from us because we were placing the big orders, as far as I know. And people just started saying GMK stabs because we were essentially the middleman there. But yeah, I'm not really sure how that happened. I don't think it was ever hidden that we weren't manufacturing them. I mean, I know
No,
I've said that for years,
yeah,
even before I worked for
a lot of people
GMK.
have known that for many years now.
Yeah, and I think I totally understand why that might be getting in, get it in a bag that says GMK, and it's just because we didn't want to buy new bags without our labels on it, or put it in a Ziploc bag, or whatever it might be. But yeah, I understand where that came from, but a little bit of digging and you'd realize that pretty quickly.
Yeah, but hey, new GMK stabilizers coming soon, so that'll be exciting.
That is probably my most. I mean, I've tested them. That's the most exciting thing I think we're doing in quite a while. Again, it's such a tiny $2 thing or whatever, but
that makes
really
such a
affects
monumental difference.
really affects just the experience. Like I can type on any switch these days, and scratchiness of this black versus that black. 2 minutes later, I'm writing or working, and I'm not thinking about that. But if I have stabilizer problems, I think about it every time I hit the damn key. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's really exciting.
There are
for
fewer
me.
things worse than having like a really nice high tuned custom and then your stabilizer like spacebar starts rattling and you're
Yep,
just like, well, that board's
ruined.
done. Yeah, you have
Now
to
it's a piece
rebuild
of
it now.
wall art. Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. I think a lot of us have been there. The Pokemon Kid with a pretty great question. How do how do these new stabilizers compare to current stabilizers like Zeal, C3, Duroc, etc.? Have you done lots of sound/feel testing between all of these and your new stabilizers?
Yeah, I mean, we have basically all of them, and we, people in the company are using all kind. They build their own too, so we have probably all of these really close by to test, um, which we could just see where some of the problems came from. So without going into too much detail on how they're different, like one of the things that are different is the size of the wire. So you're not going to be able to use current wires with our new stab. But there are things that we could change by changing the size of the wire that affected overall performance. And, that's a small change out of the changes that we made, which were quite a few, but things like that, I think, really make a difference. So sound, I mean, again, we were basically designing it to be as invisible as possible. So I can't really say that we were going for a certain sound or certain feel other than we don't want you to really notice they have a certain feel or sound. I mean, it should just feel like any other key when you're hitting a stabilized key. So that'll never be the case. It will never be perfect where your enter feels like your semicolon, but I think we got a lot closer than pretty much any other stab on the market as far as hitting that target.
Interesting. All right. So definitely high hopes for that one. New Types is asking any successor to the C70 in the works. Obviously, you don't have to answer any of these questions if you can't say, so keep that in mind as well.
All I can say is the Q series and the C series, they are not dead by any means. I think the C70 was a really fun experiment to get into the hobby. I think it was like a really unique board. I mean, it's, like any strange layout board, it's got its people that love it, people that hate it. For us, it was just really, really good to be able to see what making a custom up to more community standards would be like, see where those problems, like even in manufacturing, might come from. So I think we learned a ton from that board. I mean, we're super proud of it. We still will continue making boards for sure. That's not stopping. I think right now, though, I can say there's not really, we have plenty of ideas, but we really want to finish executing the trays and the stabilizers and stuff and put our attention there because we are a very small company. I mean, I think around 50 people. So yeah, by no means should you think that was the last thing we'll ever make. There's just nothing, in the next quarter that you should expect from us by.
Cool. All right. Z-Man1942 as our next question. And this one's a great one, and I'm really upset I forgot to add it to my topic list because it should have been there. But he's asking, do you plan on having your popular sets as part of a regular stock? So obviously you have Q01,
Yeah.
but it'd be really kind of nice to see some of the more neutral colors that you could stock, maybe some more stock colors.
100% agree. And yes, with the US store, that is a big part of it. We do want to have more stock sets. Now, a big part of what my job is as well, just to go into it a little bit, is to make sure we are not competing with our vendors. I mean, that would be shitty, right? They're doing so much work and they're doing so much great stuff. We could come in and undersell them, but that's not what we want to do at all. So I can say don't expect to see any custom sets coming from GMK, but as far as stock sets like the Q01 and maybe some just more classic sets like, let's say, classic beige or something like white on black, I think for sure that you can expect to see some very simplified kits in the store. And one of the ways that we do want to basically, though, encourage other vendors to keep running sets like this is that these kits are going to be fairly basic. We're not going to include all the keys for weird 40% boards and everything or splits.
Q01 has immensely good compatibility, though.
Yeah, I think we are really proud of the compatibility and price point we came on that. So that might change a little for the next one. I don't think much. We spent a lot of time really internally discussing and arguing back and forth nicely what should be covered and what shouldn't. And I think it's just important with these sets that are kind of sets everybody can use, like white on black or classic beige, sets that aren't under any ownership. We want to be able to, it is weird that we're known now within the community for keycaps, and you can't just come buy a set directly from us. So people that are interested in, like, let me see what this is all about. How do I do that? Well, you're waiting, probably months to get something, which is it is strange. So we are planning on coming up with stock sets in the house, and those will show up once the US site is starting to ship.
Awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of people here, and I mean, you can see it in the chat as well. A lot of people are looking forward to things like white on black, black on white. Honeywell would be really nice. You know, things like that. Some people are saying Dolce even 9009.
Yeah.
Some of the more classic colorways that aren't owned, you know, that aren't custom.
Yeah, a big part of that is we definitely will do that without question. It really is just making sure that we also don't interfere with sets vendors are running. So, for example, I wouldn't want to have,
excuse me,
you know, something in the store that's directly competing with something that like Novel Keys or Dixie is running at the same time, or like, you know, Honeywell. Like that's something I did with Sheraton and that he's been running.
Yeah.
At the same time, it is. I picked what 2 or 3 colors. I didn't do anything. Miriam and the Desk Authority guys are the ones that did all the work for Honeywell by picking the colors initially with SP and all that. So I think it's just being aware of what's going on in the community and just making sure that we're not directly competing, which is why we're kind of going with we're not going to cover everything because we do want people to still run the bigger sets that do cover all these crazy layouts. So maybe now they can just run, you know, if we have something like a base white on black in the store for $109 and it's always for sale, now they can work on maybe some cool modifier packs, which I think is something that is really underplayed these days. I think there's so much room for people to design smaller mod kits that would work with so many sets.
We've been seeing a lot of those lately, actually. Quite a few of them.
Yeah, and it's great to see. I mean, I really do think that is a great thing to do. It's very economical too. You don't need to buy a whole new set every time because I know like you and me and probably a lot of people have bought sets in the past for maybe just one particular key. I mean, I know I bought Skeletor just for like an enter key. That's not my thing, but I just wanted a different color enter key for Honeywell and it had yellow I liked it. I shelled out just for that. So
Honeywell with a Skeletor enter. You heard it here first, guys. This is the big brain stuff.
I might have been drinking when I thought that would be a good idea. It's not how my board is now. That whole kit is just somewhere in a closet or like given away. But yeah.
Yeah. Just while we're on the topic of compatibility, I'm kind of curious to pick your brain on this. Something I've been curious about a lot. Obviously, with a lot of these vendors running a lot of the custom colored GMK sets, or even some of the non-custom colored GMK sets, it seems like no one can really entirely decide on like what base kit is best for our enthusiast community, and almost every single set you see is a little bit different from the last. And I was kind of curious to think if like you or maybe the people at GMK just thought there was a like one base kit to rule them all set up that we should be using.
See, that's why it's hard, and why I even say the QO1 might change because we spent a lot of time on that. But like we said earlier in the show, people are coming up with like new keyboards every day, and all of them don't take hold, but sometimes like a really weird layout just takes hold.
Yeah.
And then you need to start supporting it. So I'm not a big...
The Alice layout, have you used an Alice layout yet? And that quote unquote requires a second B. So it's interesting. We're seeing that in a lot of kits. A lot of kits now getting extra Bs just for how popular the Alice layout is.
Right. And I think that that's a great example of how it's done well. Like when that initially that keyboard and that layout, hit the forums initially, there was no reason for anybody to start covering that keyboard then, because it easily could have just been a flop that nobody cared about. Instead, it turned into like a huge thing where, now with open source, there's who knows how many like Alice's and Alice clones out there.
Every week more are coming out.
Yeah, so it's a very easy thing to cover. It's not adding any significant cost whatsoever, like cents to the dollar to cover the Alice with what it needs. So obviously you can't do that for every keyboard out there, because adding, $1 for caps here and there to cover every board, now you really do end up with like...
You really start to rack up the price when you're trying to
accommodate you just have this
literally everyone.
Really bloated kit that doesn't really make sense, especially if you are trying to sell one base kit, not like an adapter kit and a base kit or alphas, mods, and whatever. So
yeah, nowadays we have a lot of child kits with GMK runs, which didn't used to be the case, but what choice do we have nowadays? Because if you want a base kit that everyone's happy with, it's going to be $200+. That's just how it is. So,
and I agree. I mean, I was a huge proprietor for the longest time where I hated child kits with GMK. The great thing about GMK was it covered everything with the base kit, but it's just not possible these days. There's so many layouts, adapter kits are needed. I do still like the idea that the base kit would cover like the basics, like Sangan, so HHKB, wind keyless, full size. A lot of people are taking the number pads out now, which I kind of get. A lot of people don't use the numpad or have a board with it, so I think it's good that the community just experiments, and when somebody hits that sweet spot, other people can and probably should follow suit. With the kit design. I mean, that's always probably the hardest part of any set I've ever done. And a lot of designers I talk to, it's not coming up with the initial idea or the colors, it's the kit. That's the hard part.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people saying even F13 in chat. F13 has been making its way on a lot of custom boards lately as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of unique kind of things just going on. So, but like you said, it is great that people are experimenting.
Just need to pay attention to that. I think that's really important. That's probably the hardest thing about if you're designing keycap set or picking colors, whatever, maybe not designing it, paying attention to what's popular in the kits. I mean, that's the hard part, and that really can make or break a set these days, I think.
Yeah, for sure. 10 Strong with a pretty lengthy question, but I'll try to get this right. He's asking, 1, where does the ownership of a combination of colors lie? Does it ever expire? And 2, are the semi-custom colors that have been produced prior, mixes stable, such as TU3, Tiffany, affect kit cost? Is it different to custom color with original designer approval? 3, personal preference, numpad in base. So this is kind of a multi-part question, so let's take it in stages here. The first part, again, where does the ownership of combination of colors lie, and does it ever expire? Obviously, you don't have to talk about any of this.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. And I think, I mean, working for GMK now, also previously creating sets in the past, I get both sides of the argument here. And like talking beforehand, as a company, we're not going to let you essentially make somebody else's set. Like, you can't clone it, but like whatever color Tiffany used, it's a RAL or a Pantone color. You don't own the color. So it's, it's a very difficult thing. And I think for me, at least, the way that I would approach it is kind of like how we did back in the day, where one set ran at a time. Everybody knew this set was running, and they were respectful, and they didn't run another set to try to compete with this set. So nowadays, with we have so many sets across, I'm talking to all profiles, just so many sets, so many color combinations. It's inevitable that sets are going to be very similar at times.
Yeah,
and I think
I think the community is starting to kind of understand and be respectful of that as well. You're going to have some level of crossover. Some 2 shades or 3 shades of purple are going to look similar. Like,
yeah,
you're going to have black with some of your purple sets. Like, it's just the way it is. So.
And I think the important thing for that is to, if it reaches group buy, just time it so it's not competing with another very similar set. And I think all the vendors that at least I interact with, all would probably agree with that. I mean, they don't want to compete necessarily with each other either.
Most vendors in this hobby are actually friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very family thing. Their success often is amplified by the success of the other vendors. It's not like let me squish you and take over. So even with designers, I mean, in forums, maybe you see an interest check for a set, let's talk purple. That was a big thing. I remember, again, probably 8 months back, there was a lot of purple sets that were apparently very similar. And first, people need to understand they're not running at the, a lot of people just come up with something, just an interest check. It's not like a malicious thing, or, a lot of new people get into the hobby and maybe they have some digital design skills. They threw out something, but they don't know the legacy sets that have been out, and they might come up with something similar. And instead of just shitting on these people and running them out of town,
which is what a lot of people in this hobby do.
Yeah, don't do that. I mean, it's not good for the community. It's not good for that person. And you can't expect somebody to know the whole history of this hobby. So I think there's ways to just kind of help and mentor them into it. And if they really like the colors, I mean, half the time I've seen people like, hey, this set already exists. You know, you can go ahead and just buy it or wait for another run of that. And if it's not running, you know, just talk to the designer. Like, I remember a lot back in the day, like Hyperfuse GMK came out and we were missing, well, in my opinion, some accent colors were missing, and you know, they weren't included for cost. So I reached out to Bunny back then and was like, hey, would it be cool if I ran a Hyperfuse add-on kit? And he was totally cool with it, which I could have done on my own anyway, but it's just not, you know, I just think it's not a respectful thing to do. And even I've had people ask, like, is this too close to Jukebox for comfort? And like, absolutely not. Like, I remember Rick came out with Joyland, I think that was.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Kind of close. And you know, he asked me that too, and I told him, like, dude, this is great. Like, I think this is a better translation with a red and green color scheme to GMK profile than Jukebox would have been. Like, go for it. It's really nice that they asked, but I don't, you know, I don't hold these colors close to me. I mean, I was inspired by the colors that I pick for my sets by other things anyway. I mean, it's much like music. We're all ripping off something. Very, very few super original ideas these days. So
yeah, and that's not a bad thing either. I mean, people are trying, they're experimenting, and a lot of people are very passionate about the hobby. I think it's really good. People would be wise to heed your advice of you know, maybe calming some of the toxicity on some of the colors, because we have just look how many sets get interest checked and group buyed every week now. It's impossible for everyone to just remember every single exact colorway and exact color used in their heads every single time. And it's like, it's not like you can necessarily just like go on Google and be like, green GMK sets, let me make sure I'm not too close to this. Like, it's not always that easy. So
no, and a lot of them are inspired like by the same thing. I mean, Joyland and Jukebox, both very reminiscent of a certain period in time, like colors that you think of for being 50s, 60s. It's inevitable that people are going to be inspired and like the same thing. So instead of just trying to own, like, you know, I own Jukebox, so I own this colorway, this decade of colors. Like, that's such a silly thing in my opinion, where like, I've always been very open with just letting people use my design. You know, people have wanted to add all kinds of things to it, and I think it's great. Like, when people are inspired to piggyback off of something I've done, it's flattering, and at the same time, like, it's exciting for me. Like, now I get to see something I've done with new eyes finally, because I don't like the sets I've designed like some people do. I'm just too close to it. So it's, for me, really exciting when people just approach me and say, hey, could I do this with some slight changes? And I, you know, I love that. I think more people could do that to other sets, and a lot of it really is just being open and asking other people if you think you might be stepping on their toes. At least in my experience, just asking them pretty much negates any problems you might have.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we still have quite a few questions here, so we're gonna pick up the pace here before we head out, of course. Just try to get a few more of these in.
2-sentence answers.
Yeah, it's unlikely we'll get to every single question, and for that I apologize. But you know, you can always hopefully reach out to him on Discord. Maybe
I am on Discord somewhere. Yeah. You can find me, GMK.
He's in the top Clack server as well, so force him to spend more time in there.
I'm always there. I should say that
you do pop up
pretty quick at answering when you PM me. I don't ever sit in any chats just reading throughout the day. I just don't have time or life force to do that anymore. Ping me anytime, please.
Fair enough. So moving on from this question here, he's also asking second part here, are the semi-custom colors that have been produced prior, such as the Tiffany TU3, does that affect cost at all?
Very nominal these days. It used to affect cost, but now MOQs are, you know, being exceeded so much that things like that pretty much don't affect cost. And then another thing is legends. So let's say that was another thing that people don't understand. So if you come out with a new language, like Rick did with Arabic, essentially the company paid for the molds, so they didn't affect the cost of the group buy that initially ran it. The other side of that is now it's available for other people to use. So a lot of things aren't affecting cost like they used to back in the day. You know, it used to be a lot more expensive to make novelties and custom colors, where today it doesn't really swing cost a noticeable amount for end users pretty much at all.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, Pluto with our next question. Although we kind of already touched on this, he's asking about stocking stock color sets, basically which ones we'd run. So we're gonna skip over that just because we did actually already kind of touch on that quite a bit. Rob27 is asking, any chance of themed colored stabilizers with GMK in the future? So this is a big thing that a lot of other companies have been doing lately. We've been seeing from C3 and Duroc mainly a lot of the recolored stabilizers. Is that something GMK is potentially interested in?
It hasn't really come across our plate yet, so at the moment I would say no, but with enough interest, nothing by any means is impossible. But I would just say no plans for the time being. First, we want to just make sure they're out and they work and they're good.
Cool, fair enough. All right, Lord K is asking, it seems that GMK queue times got backed up before COVID-19, and the virus has added to the delay. Is there an estimate timetable when the turnaround times on production will get back to where they were last year, or do you think they never will with the increased demand? So, yeah, I mean, obviously with COVID-19 and the increased demand, it's got to be a pretty big burden.
It definitely slowed things down. Obviously, people first can't pump out the way we used to. In the back side of things, we have been investing in more machines, which these are huge investments, you know, high six-figure investments. It's not a little thing, but I'll just say that we're doing our part on the back end to try to really keep lead times with community. We'd like to see between 8 and 12 weeks, period. So if we need to grow with the community, you know, if it explodes like it has now, they might get a little slower, but we are very aware of that. And we pretty much will invest in making sure that we can get back between that 8 and 12 weeks. I think that's a good time and a reasonable one to get them out.
Cool. Sounds good. Iwane with our next question. This is a good one. What kind of mods do you like best? So obviously GMK does quite a few. Icon, text plus icon, centered, text only.
Text icons. I don't really like symbols and scoops.
All right. So you're a fan of the text only mods, huh?
Yeah, I like my text.
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. I gotta be honest. I thought you'd always be more of a classic text plus icon guy.
Gets kind of busy.
That's fair. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Just kind of scrolling through some more questions here. The Pokemon Kid is asking, what are your thoughts on the cat MOQ system? Has there been any thought of moving over to something similar to that? Are you familiar with how cat works? So no. Cat stands for Key Creative All Touch. Key Creative is kind of the company behind it. I don't know if they're actually the manufacturer, but they do a lot of work with PBT caps recently. They do DSA, Cherry Profile. They do Cherry Profile ABS even, as well as Cat is kind of one of their kind of flagship products right now, which is a semi sculpted, semi tall profile.
I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Okay, so their MOQ system's a little bit different. They do it per cap instead of per kit. So as long as you sell a specific number of caps, it doesn't matter how many kits you have or how well they do, basically. Which is obviously quite a bit different than how GMK and a lot of other people do it. So that's why with a lot of the cat group buys, you see a bazillion kits, and every single one of them has a bazillion caps in it. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how GMK could approach that potentially.
Yeah, I'd have to. Yeah, I can't answer that right off the bat. I mean, that's definitely that's a much more complex thing than just how we charge by cap. It really comes down to manual labor, packaging, and sorting. So yeah, I can't really answer that at the moment.
Fair enough.
Come up with one. I'm gonna get another drink. Give me 20 seconds.
Another drink. Got it.
I need a drink.
He needs a drink, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you just need a drink. Kind of like when I just have to go pee. But I'm holding it in right now just for you guys. All right, so I wasn't expecting this, so I'm sorry for the lull in silence, guys. Brian, please. I'm sorry. I hope you guys are having a good day, though. Are you guys enjoying this? Do you guys like this kind of content? I think this has been really informative. I've learned a lot. Just like I have the last couple episodes of this. This is lovely. Great conversation. Thanks, guys. Sponsor segment time. This show technically has no sponsors, so no sponsor segment on this show at the moment. We might pick up sponsors for this show in the future. I was kind of just curious to see how this show would do. I didn't expect it to do very well, but I mean, right now we have, what, 104 viewers, which is pretty good. So, I don't know. We'll consider sponsors for this. But I didn't want to bore you guys with sponsor spots in the first few episodes at the very least. This is the best one yet? Really? Okay, yeah.
This is the most I have talked since quarantine started, so I am parched. I've said more in the last hour than I've said in the last 2 months.
Yeah, I think, obviously I can speak for myself here, but I think I can speak for the community as well, that we're kind of learning a lot because of this, so, you know, we definitely appreciate it. We have a couple questions left, so we're going to answer a couple more before we head out for the night. But yeah, we're starting to catch up here. All right, so our next question here is going to be from Discriminate, asking, how come there's no command key for Mac users? Aren't there command keys? Don't you have molds for that now? I'm pretty sure we've seen GMK command keys.
For sure. And that would be something, they do exist. If they didn't, that would be something that could think they haven't reached popularity. And that's just something I never understood. I don't get why command verse whatever it is on a proper PC system, be it alt or control, what you know, whatever. I don't always think the legend hasn't necessarily lined up exactly, but I get why people want it, and it does exist. I just think it's just not that popular with people putting it in kits.
Yeah, fair enough. Depleted Vespine asking, have you ever had to deal with text mods in languages other than English?
We do have some, yeah. Can be tricky though.
Yeah.
I don't think we've really had many new ones in quite a while, other than the ones for you know, a lot of custom designs. Some people have used some here and there, but yeah, I don't think we've dealt with many people using or asking for those, to be honest. But it's definitely something we could do more of.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Sarah Jeem, I think that it is asking, or saying this is good, informative content. Cool. Yeah, while you were gone, I was asking how people were enjoying the episode. Everyone said they hated it, and they hated you, of course.
Word.
/S, sarcasm, guys. For the people that are going to be listening to the podcast version of this, they're like, wait, is he serious? All right, so Rob with another good question. He's asking, what keyboard is on your couch behind you there?
Oh, yeah, that's a fun question. So it is... It's an old Aiden. Oh, you can kind of see I'm missing a key here. So, you know, there's nothing holding the stem up. There's actually a dome under the cap, so it feels very similar to Topre. It was a military video editing board. Feels wonderful though, like Topre but better.
Nice. Chris Clack is asking, is LSB aware that he both sounds and looks like Jake Gyllenhaal?
Who is that? Is that Darnie Darko guy?
I mean, yeah. Well, he said a lot of other stuff too, but yeah. I think he's a good looking dude. I would say that's a compliment.
I mean, you know,
I get Seth Rogen, like Jake Gyllenhaal. That's
like George Clooney or Bradley Pitt, but
Bradley Pitt.
Donnie Darko, I'll take it. You know, I'm not much to look at to begin with, so anything that's not awful, I guess, is a compliment.
I would say Jake Gyllenhaal he's touted as a pretty attractive dude. That's a compliment, I would say. All right. Sorry for the rambling, guys. Moving on. Dixie in chat, of course, has a question for us here. When will the melting down of the OG icon mods that I forced y'all to begin with /S? So sarcasm, obviously. Referring to referring to the new left. What are people calling it? What does GMK internally call those left-centered mods that Dixie and Yanglad?
I don't know, but that is actually like a big thing with why we need to have serialized options for people to choose, so they can essentially, you know, pick the old ones or the new corrected ones, as some people call it.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has a different thing to call it, and I feel like we need some consistency, whether it's from GMK or not.
So instead of people referring to it as the mods on this set, we just need an internal reference number that everybody can do. So yeah, that is coming much, you know, hopefully sooner than later. COVID has slowed that down again because they have access to all the internal molds and stuff. But yeah, that's definitely coming. So we can call it DX 98008 or whatever mods people end up calling.
Just for my personal curiosity, how do you and other people at GMK feel about those particular mods? Is that like kind of your preference now? Do you think it looks better, maybe worse?
Actually, I was in Germany when that was like kind of happening, to talk back and forth, and yeah, we liked it. It's something, you know, we inherited the cherry ones and people just used them and we didn't think about it, but the changes make sense. So yeah, I mean, I think we're all internally a fan of what he did with those.
Cool. Yeah, I feel you. I personally like it. I think it's a little bit more visually appealing.
I do too. I mean,
visual
something again I never thought about until I saw the new ones, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That looks better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are actually fully caught up on questions here, and so I know we went over time quite a bit, but I hope it was an informative episode, and you guys are okay with the extended length of this particular episode. But with that in mind,
people enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, see, it seems like it. People were saying it was pretty educational, which is exactly what I was hoping for, because...
If you have more questions later, of course, again, feel free to just ping me on the Discord. I think I'm in most of them. I'm in the Big Mech Keys one, Input Club, Key Company, Utah, Seattle, Top Clack, of course, the best one.
Oh, Andy, please.
Yeah, ping me.
Cool. So yeah, just ping him if you have some more questions. You know, we can always try to relay those to him if you ask in our Discord as well. But with that in mind, we are actually going to be heading out. So of course, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your obviously busy schedule with GMK to help with us here. I know you work a lot of hours every day, so
yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Sad we couldn't just hang out in person one day.
Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah.
You're like right there.
I know we're like actually an hour away from each other, but you know, obviously COVID, so it is what it is. But we definitely appreciate the online presence regardless. So yes, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Andy, thanks one last time for joining us here, and of course
for hosting.
Yeah, no problem. And if you like this kind of thing, I will be doing another episode. I've guest confirms for the next like 3, 4, or 5 weeks. So if you're into this sort of thing, you know, stay tuned and make sure you follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, until next time, hope you have a good one and enjoy the rest of your day or night.
Ciao.